So what happens if you now erase, because some people want to just get rid of Muslims. So let's say they can have their way and they go back in a time machine. What would happen if they erased those Muslims that came up with those concepts at that time? What would happen now? And then we fast forward today.
Yes.
What would we be losing out? I don't think we'd have the iPads, anything that, what would happen?
Let's take the facts. So Ottoman Empire was a Muslim state, giving the freedom to everyone, all the citizens, right? Treating them equal. Have Ottoman Empire not done that? How is it that possible for a Muslim empire to stay in Balkan for 600 years, but the Hitler as a Christian couldn't stay 6 years?
It's like, when did you think that you had no purpose? Are you worthless? The value comes from purpose.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back to the Deen Show, and we have Executive Director, Historian Halil Demir. How are you? Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you so much.
Thank you for being with us here on the Deen Show.
I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're here in Ramadan, and I'm very honored to have someone with your expertise. You've been studying history now for how long?
I lost the count of the years. I don't know, for a very long time.
So we can ask you anything regarding, Islamic civilization, and that's something that we get hit with a lot. Well, let's start with this. The Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam, Abraham,
Yes.
who Allah says in the Quran, he wasn't a Jew or a Christian, but he was one who submitted himself to the Almighty, to God. And that's what a Muslim is, right?
Yes.
You are actually, where was he born?
He was born in the city of Urfa.
You're from there?
I'm from Urfa, yes.
Yeah? Tell us about that.
So Urfa is a very historical city, southeastern Turkey, between Syria and Turkey, very closer to Iraqi border. As you know, Ibrahim alayhi salam was born, according to Torah, in city of Ur of Kaldan. So Kaldan is it is a Mesopotamia, and that is upper Mesopotamia. And Ibrahim alayhi salam has city of Harran. That's where Ibrahim alayhi salam's brothers, the city named after his brother. So Harran still exists today.
Yeah.
And the second Crusaders, when they were invading the land of the Muslims, the first Crusader went to Jerusalem, but the second Crusader went to Harran, went to Urfa. The reason Urfa was very important for the religious purpose, and city of Urfa was seen as a holy city, a very religious center. So when we take Ibrahim alayhi salam's journey, so according to Torah, Ibrahim alayhi salam used to live in city of Ur of Kaldan. So some assumption by the late historians that he was in city of Ur of Iraq, and if he was living in city of Ur of Iraq, then Ibrahim alayhi salam doesn't need to go all the way to up in a very dangerous road and then turn left, go all the way to southern Turkey, and then live there for a very long time and then go down to Palestine. Rather, he will cross the road, go directly from Iraq to Syria and Palestine. So geographically, that doesn't make sense. 1, 2, Ibrahim alayhi salam, for people to be named, the city named after you, you have to be living in that city very long time. So Harran was named after his older brother, and his father's Terah's grave is still in Harran today. You can visit now. His nephew Suruch died there, and city of Suruch named after him. All these are there, we can witness. Also, Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into fire in city of Urfa, and the heart of Urfa, there is a lake, huge lake, thousands and hundred thousands of fishes in this lake. So the oral history tells us that Ibrahim alayhi salam, when thrown into fire, that lake the fire become water, and then branches become fishes and exist today in Urfa. When we visit the city, in heart of city, and people don't touch these fishes, so we know from the oral history that these fishes has something to do with Ibrahim alayhi salam, definitely.
And they don't call it this. They changed the name of the city now, right? Is it?
Well, they call Shanli Urfa, the modern Turkish history. Reason is that after First World War, Urfa, along with the Marash and Gaziantep, the Syrian border, was occupied by France, and the people of Urfa revolted, and then actually forced the French and the occupation. Due to this heroic struggle of, without military, the civilians, the Turkish government, modern Turkish government, named Shanli, means honorary.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
We often hear, because as you know, the Islamophobic industry is huge.
Yes.
And one of the talking points that they like to use a lot of times is they try to make Muslims out to be like backwards, like they haven't contributed anything to human civilization. How true is that point?
That's nonsense. So it's really nonsense. First of all, the clash of civilization is nonsense. The civilization don't clash. Civilization actually build over each other, contributed, collaborated, and strengthened. The civilization is the belong the whole humanity. So what we should say, sugar is coming from the Chinese civilization. So without sugar, we wouldn't have probably any of this coffee and tea, even though we're fasting probably, but right now we wouldn't have it.
Maybe we wouldn't have the diabetes and all these things.
True. Or the papyrus, the paper is coming from the civilization of the Egyptian civilization. So without that civilization, we wouldn't have paper. Or many medical things that we talk about today, all are coming from the Sumerian civilization. So Babylonian civilization, the constitution, that written constitution, coming from Babylonian civilization. So civilization, there is no clash of civilization. There is collaboration and building on each other. Rather, a civilization doesn't clash, rather collaborate. In that, Islamic civilization and contribution of Islamic civilization, undeniable. So many scholars in medieval times went and studied in universities of Harran, University of Baghdad, Damascus, and learn. And when we look at, in fact, they were philosophers. We wouldn't believe it. Very interesting. But in Muslim Islamic civilization, the teaching was so liberal, was so open. And in the madrasas, in the universities, they were atheists, actually, denying that God exists, while discussing with the Muslim scholars, and they were still able to study in these universities. So that's this civilization built and supported, and whatever the Western civilization, in fact, also all the Greek civilization, the Greek philosophers were translated by the Muslims and then translated from Arabic into European languages. So Europe actually learned about the Greek civilization and Greek philosophers through the Muslims and their translations. And that is undeniable. This is very, very a knowledge that every learned man in Europe knows that.
I like what you said. Okay, so because they try to put out their class of civilization, so right from that title, you're separating us.
Yes, sir.
You're separating human beings. But you're saying right now it was a collaboration. So different civilizations, they added, and from there others they added, and now we come to what we have today. But what are some of the top things that come to your mind that the Muslim civilization, that they, let's say the top 3, 4, 5 things that come to mind that people are still benefiting from today?
Oh, it's very simple. The chemistry, the geometry.
Chemistry.
Yes, sir.
Geometry.
Yes.
If someone says how is that?
All very simple. When any one, if have this question, very simple. Look, take any book. History of science, study history of science is very, very clearly, and go every history of science book will have a section of Islamic civilization. You can look at it and you will see what the contribution of the Muslims are in the civilization of. And beyond that, let's go a little back. So
we already covered one. We got the math, science. You got chemistry,
yes.
Geometry. So math.
Yes, so the algebra is
Algebra,
coming,
yes.
it's coming. The name algebra itself is coming bin Jabir min Hayyan. The name is coming from the person who actually created that.
So is this historically substantiated that what Muslims came up with these
Yes, sir.
mathematics concepts?
As I said, just take one of these history of science book, and you will see there.
So what happens if you now erase, because some people want to just get rid of Muslims, so let's say they can have their way and they go back in a time machine, what would happen if they erased those Muslims that came up with those concepts at that time? What would happen now? And then we fast forward today.
Yes.
What would we be losing out? I don't think we'd have the
So
iPads, anything that, what would happen?
You're telling me a world without Islam, right?
Uh-huh.
A world without
Yeah,
Islam. Well,
With
there
just
is-
these few things.
Yes. So we have to go a little back. Go back to history of the monotheism. So the monotheistic culture, the monotheistic civilization, as I said, comes from city of Urfa, is a Middle Eastern thought. So start with Ibrahim alayhi salam. All three monotheistic religion believe the message that he brought, the monotheistic thoughts, right? So look at the civilizations in the world that affected by these three religions. So all goes back to the monotheistic civilization, and that itself is coming from Middle East. Itself is basically a culture, is a Middle Eastern culture where the Muslim are majority today. So therefore, denying, even when you deny everything, but the three books that the civilization, the monotheistic civilization that brought to mankind, has changed the history of mankind once and for all. So you can deny one part of it, you can deny other part of it, but the civilization, monotheistic civilization today is affecting the whole world. No one can deny that. So Islam is part of that monotheistic culture, and Islam has been shaping and contributing and building last almost 1,400 years.
Yeah.
Okay, and brought so many changes to the history of the mankind, human being, benefit from that, and try to deny that Islam wouldn't exist and a world without Islam, first of all, that will not be possible. But even when you have a dream like that, itself, you have to take big portion of the whatever you call Christian civilization, and you have to throw into the lake or into the ocean to get rid of the Islamic civilization, because undeniable has affected from the art, the architecture, everything else that you can imagine. Undeniably is Orient origin.
Give us, please, a couple more. So we covered geometry, the math, the algebra. What other couple things come to? Okay.
Let's take history. So history and sociology developed by Ibn Khaldun. So until Ibn Khaldun, we have history.
Now, for someone never heard this name, who is he?
Oh, okay. Ibn Khaldun is a historian and philosopher, and he was born in Andalus, and then he moved to
So that's
Africa.
Spain now.
Spain, today Spain. He was
Uh-huh.
born there, and then he moved, and later he became Qadi in Egypt, and he died in Egypt.
He became a judge in Egypt?
He was, yes, a Qadi. He was a top judge, actually. And he was a statesman. He was, as a diplomat, he was sent to meet Timur when he was coming toward the land of the Turks. Land of the Ottoman Empire in Anatolia. He met them, and in fact, Timur has invited him to come with him. So until we reach Ibn Khaldun, we have only chronology. So we'll write, says, in this year, this king that did that and this, until Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun comes, he says, this is not history. And we have to look at before and after. We have to look at every aspect of and reasons why this happened, in order for us to understand and maybe not repeat. If we're going to repeat, think twice before we make same mistake. So that become history. Same thing sociology. Until Ibn Khaldun was the first one ever thought that every interaction, human interaction, follows a pattern. So his famous circle theory. Circle theory says then the civilization will come, will go up, will reach a peak, will slowly go down, and then he explains every stage of it, when and how. While he explained all these stages, he told also human interaction and reason. So there is a pattern that he says that human being follows, and that was later on recognized as a sociology. So until Auguste Comte come with the word sociology, was actually not known to anyone but Ibn Khaldun.
So we link that's the root of it, and we
History
use it today.
and sociology, both.
So now, if you didn't have him, you wouldn't have that
No,
today.
sir. You will not have that sociology today, what we understand. Nor we will have a history as it is, as a historiography, as what we have
yeah.
today. Because history will be only like Herodotus history, only chronology.
And all I can see is a lazy argument, like someone who says, well, if it wasn't him, it would have been someone else. I mean, that's someone else would have developed it maybe sometime later, but that's just a lazy argument. I mean,
well, you know, if we go, maybe the history, we will not have a civilization.
Yeah, so
you know, before him, nobody thought about it.
Before him, and then
nobody, and he thought.
So the fact is, he's the one. So the fact is, he's the one, and we have it today, and that is based on
Islam, attached to Islamic history.
That's attached
Islamic
to Islam.
civilization.
Islamic civilization.
Because he was, and his famous book called Introduction, Muqaddimah, is taught in every university, every, the humanities, anyone who study in European humanities, they will learn Ibn Khaldun's introduction.
So this is some more evidence. I like what you said. There's no clash of civilizations, but no, what is it's
a collaboration of the civilizations.
All right, but someone says, look, give me one more now. So we had two. Give me another. So we had the algebra, geometry, we had the maths. And now we have the history, sociology. What else comes to mind?
Let's go also the medicine. So
medicine, that's a big one now.
Yes, sir. So Ibn Sina's Shifa.
Say that name again.
Ibn Sina.
Ibn Sina.
Yes. I think it's translated as Avicenna, I think, in European language, called Avicenna, right? So his book called Shifa.
Now, where's he from? Who is he?
He was born and raised in today's modern Iran, and he was a Turkish-speaking person, or born in a Turkish family, and he likes science. He has studied medicine in early age, and he becomes so professional. He was the first one actually started operating the human being. So the operation, precise operation, identify, and also the tools for the operation. Even today, when you look at, again, I refer to History of Science book, you can see the tools that he actually used. Was used in Europe for a very long time, until the modern times actually. So he played a very serious role in our modern medicine actually. So Ibn Sina is very famous. And we have Farabi, a philosopher. Farabi is also, again, a Turkish-speaking philosopher.
What specifics in medicine now that people can link to Ibn Sina?
The operations, precise operations. Yes.
What is the operation?
Yes. No. Before, when you have a stomach pain, right? So the Egyptian operation usually will open almost everything and go through. So it was Ibn Sina to identify, be very precise, where is it actually, and why, and where it has to be operated. It was his thought, rather than opening the whole body, he will always target certain area, and use the tools that was not used before. So he created some tools actually himself.
Now tools on top of operating tools, medical tools.
And he was the one who created these tools actually for the operation.
So he's got the patent on them. If they had a patent, such thing, if we had
that
today,
it's his patent.
Do the people today in the Western world, people who are historians,
They
who are not
recognize him,
Muslim,
of course.
that's
Yes,
not
yes,
something,
of
because there's a
course.
lot of hidden
No,
history, right?
no, yes.
And why do you think that are a lot of these things taught in the universities today of the Islamic civilization, how it's contributed? Do you see a lot of the stuff hidden, and people don't, the
No.
average American doesn't get this type of history?
I
Or
think
you got to go digging for it?
in United States, people usually don't read. But European, most educated Europeans will know all these things when we talk about it. So therefore, when I speak at a crowd, I don't need to explain who Ibn Khaldun was or who Ibn Sina is, because assumption is that most of the people will know these names. If you're an educated person in Europe, definitely you will know these names, especially humanities. 100% you will know.
One thing, the environment now, Andalus, Spain, where you had many, was it the Jews who fled persecution?
Yes,
you had
sir.
Christians, and you had dialogue. You had talk to us the atmosphere.
It was probably, according to historian, probably one of the best collaboration of the civilization. The science and art and knowledge was used by everyone, spread, and the religious communities will collaborate, will learn from each other. And today's hate was not there, was respect and love.
So you had a true sense of freedom of,
Yes, sir.
if you're a Jew, to practice Judaism,
It does.
Christian to practice Christianity. There was
Yes.
no by the sword,
No,
like
not
convert
at
or
all.
die.
Not at all. Until
This
the
is historical-
historical fact.
Until what now? The Inquisition?
Yes, until the Muslims were expelled from Spain, the Catholics took over Spain, and everything changed. They start with the Muslims and Jew, the famous Jew communities. The famous word among the Jew called convertos. So they were forced to convert
or
be
die?
killed. Yes.
So what they tried to go ahead and put on the Muslims, which is something that obviously, because Islam means submission to the will of God sincerely. You can't do it sincerely if it's done by the sword, right? But they were doing it by the sword?
But Islamic civilization, there is the order of God. That order says La ikraha fi
La ikraha
din.
fi din.
So that is Islamic civilization.
No
showed there is
compulsion.
No compulsion.
No
And
compulsion. You
no
can't
one
compel.
can deny that.
Were they compelling people with these inquisitions?
Unfortunately, yes.
This is known
unfortunately.
historically.
Yes, and that's why you have a Jewish community today in Turkey, a big Jewish community in Turkey. So this Jewish community, the one that expelled from Spain or run from Spain, they came, and the Ottoman Empire accepted them as refugees, and they lived among the Muslims all these centuries. In fact, there is one, when you're in Istanbul, you can visit some of these very old churches. Yeah, I'm sorry, synagogues, very old synagogues. And the community, interestingly, the Jewish community in Istanbul still speak a broken Spanish.
Yeah.
Still, all the way to today. And they have a newspaper, very long time, called Shalom. Is also, used to be half
Wow.
Spanish all the way, all these hundreds of years. So the community that came from Spain lived among the Muslims all the way to today, and they're still there, part of our communities. I don't think ever any Jew has felt probably threatened or disrespected just because they are Jew.
One name comes to mind. Was it Moses, the Jewish scholar, Moses Maimonides?
Yes. Maimonides, yes.
Yes. Tell us a little about him.
Well, he's not only one. In fact, when you look at the Jewish history, you will see a lot of them, and some of them actually named later on, because their names sound so Arabic names, you wouldn't know that they were like a Jewish scholars. But the Jewish scholars were because they were part of society. So it was not like, when you have these books that you specifically go and say these were written by a Jew, but a lot of history books, especially for the Eastern Christianity, they have a lot of books are coming written by the great Jewish scholars, very respectful scholars, including Maimonides. And they were respected in Muslim land as being part of Islamic civilization, because they were citizen, they were part of the society. They were never differentiated like you are different or you're somebody
Like
else.
a legal alien?
No.
You know, like
not
we
at
have
all.
that title, like a legal alien, you know. Reason I mention him, because he was, to this day, he's known as one of the greatest, Jewish Orthodox scholars, isn't he?
Yes,
They look
he
back
is.
to him. So he was part of that civilization. He flourished in the Muslim lands.
And many of them, it's many of them. In fact, it's very
And
interesting.
I bring this up, don't lose your point, because again, you see a lot of the Islamophobia industry, they try to make it seem like, Muslims, they hate Jews. If they had their way, they'd kill everybody. The heads would be coming. You got guys out there who go in front of mosques and they put a line over their shirt, and they're, trying to spread the message like, these Muslims are barbarians. They had it their way, they'd be chopping heads off. Right?
That's
But this is
the-
not happening when we
that's
study
ridiculous.
history.
No, let's say the Ottoman Empire, big portion of the Balkan was under Ottoman Empire for 400-500 years, right? So let's take the facts. So Ottoman Empire was a Muslim state, giving the freedom to everyone, all the citizen, right? Treating them equal. Have Ottoman Empire not done that? How is it that possible for a Muslim empire to stay in Balkan for 600 years, but the Hitler as a Christian couldn't stay 6 years?
Say that again.
Hitler, the Nazi Germany, occupied the same land where the Ottoman Empire, so today's Yugoslavia.
And he couldn't stay there. He
couldn't stay there 6 years.
He couldn't hold it down 6
No,
years.
sir.
They held it down how long?
People 600 years.
600
Yes.
years.
So if you think,
That's a strong point. Wow.
logically, if it was an oppression, if it was a fear, you cannot keep people under the fear. Have that been possible, Hitler will probably still occupy the whole Europe.
He couldn't hold it down. Hitler couldn't hold it down for 6 years. They held
None
it
of
down
them.
for 600.
Yes, sir. So
That-
how is it possible,
how is it
right?
possible?
Yes. No, the Ottoman Empire, in fact, Yugoslavia or Serbia is a good example. We can prove historically. They collected taxes 50 cents, but they invested $1.
Hmm.
In fact, they did not exploit anything. What they're going to exploit? They're going to exploit watermelon. Serbia has a lot of watermelons.
Speaking of that, tell us, were there, because again, human beings, we can't expect human beings, they're perfectly imperfect. So Islam is perfect. It's a system from the
Yes.
Creator. But have there been times in history where Muslims have made great blunders, and they've done, because you have a lot of complaints
Yes.
from Serbs. They talk about, certain events that happened, oppression against them. Is there something that we can say, yeah, okay, they made a mistake here? Is there something like that?
I wouldn't take that part only, but here is the fact. We have to ask also our Serbian friends. So why did Muslims come to Europe or Balkan to start with? So aggression against the Christian was so harsh. The Christian, the father-in-law of the Ottoman Bey, Orhan Bey, Heraclius, the king of Rome or the Byzance, asked Orhan Bey to come and defend Christians from the fear of the Serbs' attack. So the Muslims came not because they were, they invaded. They were invited by the Christians, by the Rome, to defend them against the aggression of the Serbs. And it's very easily, you look at the history and you can see when the Muslims moved over Europe, long before they conquered Istanbul. Actually, they conquered half of the Thracia, and the reason is that because they were defending Christian minorities, and the Catholic Christian minority in Croatia will witness, and there are enough signs. The decree of Muhammad II, Fatih Sultan Muhammad, the decree that he give it to the Catholics is proof. It says literally, you can find now the historical document. It says you have same rights and any other citizen, Muslim citizen of this country. Your schools, your monasteries, and your land belong to you. You will be treated with respect and fair as anyone else. Ever you are bothered, ever you are for any reason attacked, my door is open to you.
Who is saying
And
this now?
This is the Sultan of
This is the
Turkey.
head of the state, the
Yes,
president, let's say.
yes.
So he's saying that to
To the
Serbs,
Christian,
Christians, anybody.
minorities. Yes.
Yeah. Tell us, when we look back in this area of the Balkans, you have the Bosnians who ended up becoming Muslim. How did that happen?
Well, the Bosnian probably, being a Bosnian, that Bosnians were always, they never accepted Christianity. In fact, they were monotheist people.
They didn't accept the Trinity.
They never accepted.
They just pure monotheists.
Exactly. They were monotheists anyway. So when the message of Islam came to them, was very simple message. Say, there is one God and one God alone. Was the message resonate?
It already resonated with their beliefs?
Because that was their belief
And that was done.
already.
What were they called before Bosnians? Was it Bogomils or something like that?
You know what? I think that was says. I don't recall very well, but I think they were a minority, but known because they were like mountainous people usually.
Yeah.
The mountainous people and the freedom-loving people, and no one could actually control them due to they knowing the
Yeah.
mountains very well. So they couldn't impose anything on them. So when Islam came, actually, their interaction with Islam, they find out, so this is my lifestyle anyway. So
Yeah.
that's why it was easy for Bosnian to accept Islam.
That's what happens even with Serbs, with Croats in that area who are sincere and they really genuinely want to connect with the Creator alone, who want to do what God wants them to do. That pure monotheism, Islam connects. It goes what we call the fitra, the natural way. Worship
Yes.
the Creator, not the creation. That's why we see so many people accepting Islam. But if someone says, if they say, well, then why? Okay, great civilization, great stories, unity, but why all this dismay and destruction when you look at Afghanistan, Iraq, Somalia? Why is this part of the Muslim world upside down and in such misery?
See, when we take from the sociological perspective, remember the First World War happened in Europe, Second World War happened in Europe, 30 Years War happened, the religious wars happened in Europe, and millions of people wasted. So for very long time, right? So, and when we look at the democracy, development of the democracy, the French Revolution, 1789. So between 1789 and 1945, ending the Second World War, you have millions of people killed on the soil of Europe. Never-ending wars. Never-ending wars. So when you compare all these wars in Muslim land, will not probably make the number the number of victims during First World or Second World War in Europe. So 1945, after the Europeans understood that it's not a solution always fighting each other and massacring and killing, then you have beginning of the European Union. So start talking and that's what we talk about, not clash of civilization, collaboration of civilization. And we see in Europe, so French speaking people and German speaking people, really they are different people in every sense almost, right, culturally and so. But yet, after seeing Second World War, so much destruction, it's not a solution for Europe and not for mankind, rather than collaboration and working together. That's how when European Union start among the European intellectuals. So let's go back to the Muslim land. Some of these Muslim countries, as you know, they are very new. Some of countries like Bahrain, I think 1980, 82, just become independent. So most of the countries, they gained their independence in 1960s. That's our lifetime. So between 1960s and 2000, you have a 50-60 years of period. So in that 50-60 years of period, also you have the foreign powers that always interfere and invaded the land to create even more misery. So let's take Afghanistan. So Afghanistan was a peaceful country until 1979, invasion of Soviet Union, supporting the Communist Party. So you brought the Communist Party on top of country, a Muslim, very traditional, and warrior nation. So then you have a war. So that invasion all the way to today, Afghanistan never had a peace. But due to an invasion, a foreign invasion, Same things apply almost everywhere. The Jew and Christian and Muslims live in Palestine, as said, 500-600 years together during Ottoman Empire. The Jewish community was a part of the civilization. They have very important roles to play. In fact,
So it seems like a lot of this outside interference making all of these problems.
No, one other things that historically, so Ottoman Empire as a Sunni dominating country has control of Iraq over 600 years, right? So the Shia of Iraq live there. So there were no single revolt of Shias during the Sunni domination. The Alavis in Syria live there. The Christian Maronites and Phalangists in Lebanon live there. The Copts lived, Coptic Christian, Coptic lived in Egypt. So there is no single revolt of these minorities or fight between each other until the modern maps are created, nation divided, and hatred built. And we have all these issues now. As I said, the Shia and Sunnis are Muslims and live together under Ottoman Empire for 600 years. No single Shia revolt against the Sunnis. None. So the same things apply with the Christian minorities. There is no single revolt of the Coptic Christian in Egypt. In fact, they were in ruling class. Most of these learned people. Look at the history books. All history of Islam always written by Christian scholars, the Arab Christian scholars. They wrote. Let's take the Ba'ath Party. Ba'ath Party was Arab nationalism was born during 1960s, and the founder of the Ba'ath Party is a Christian, Michel Aflaq. He was a Christian Arab. So he was a nationalist Arab. And when he was talking about Islam, he was proudly talking about Islam, even though himself was a Christian. Or let's take Tariq Aziz. Tariq Aziz was foreign minister of Iraq in 80s and 90s. Tariq Aziz is a Christian, Chaldeanic Christian. But you will never know that he was Christian because he was part of in Islamic civilization. They were not so much differentiating between being a Christian, Muslim, or Jew.
Yeah.
Basically, what you can contribute to society was more important. Every community played role. So some of this problem, unfortunately, imposed on the Muslim societies, as in example in Afghanistan.
So can you summarize? Is this a quick summary if it's accurate for someone? Because again, when you're blown back into the Stone Age, you're invaded, your resources are plundered, colonization. All of these are the factors that we have what we have today over there.
Yes, sir.
Outside interference. How accurate is this film? They have this become very popular here in America. Arturo.
Yeah, Arturo Resurrection, yes.
Yes, Resurrection.
Yes.
Arturo. In that film, they actually, have you seen it?
Yes, sir.
They spend a lot of time showing the enemies who are always plotting and planning to create this dissension.
Yes.
If it was happening then, that's historically correct. You can just copy and paste, same thing happening today, kind of?
Well, probably almost.
You get what I'm saying?
Yes, I get your point. So, first of all, let us see the film. The film is one of the most watched movie in the world, translated almost in every language, right? So it says carries the values. So if you are Christian, Hindu, or Muslim, doesn't make difference. Actually, the people watching the movie transferring values, telling you being honest and decent and religious
values.
And fair.
Say those values again: honesty,
yes,
virtue, justice.
Yes,
it carries those. Fairness.
Okay, so that's why. So a Christian identify, and I'm witness. As Christians identify themselves with these values, especially when you are a fair person. So I think movie from that perspective show, and it's as you know is a fiction, so has a lot of historical fact and some stories to make the entertainment, easy to watch, but a lot of historical facts are there. And you can also see that collaborating between the Christian and the Muslims, you can see also collaborating with the the Jewish communities and their place in the Muslim society and contribution, but basically carries the values, and these values were the monotheistic values and always shared by every religious or spiritual person. Not always hatred, not always war, not always division, not always, they were none. We grew up in a multicultural society. Muslim communities were always multicultural. So there were no differences between, and the movie teaches you, there is no differences between Uncle Misho or Uncle Mustafa, as long as they hold themselves to these values that make a good human being. And I think that's where movie make a sense.
We're almost out of time, so the movie's very accurate historically. If someone also wants to know about the Ottoman Empire, the rise of it, because
Yes.
Arturo, he's the
Father of the Ottoman Bey.
he's the father of Osman Bey.
Osman Bey is the founder.
Bey, what does
of,
Bey mean? That's a
Bey-
dearment of respect,
Yeah, it means sir almost.
Sir?
Sir.
a
yeah.
high level of respect.
Yes.
So you have Arturo. He's the
father of the Osman Bey.
Osman Bey
Bey
is
is
the
the father of the Orhan Bey, and Orhan Bey, father of the Muhammad Chalabi, and father of Muhammad Chalabi's father goes Murad, and Murad is the father of the and goes on.
So that's it. That's the start from
Yes.
there, and then you can see historically how things develop. But one thing that people can capture from there is their deep devotion to God, to the
Yeah,
one
they
God,
are.
to the Creator, to pure
Yes.
monotheism, and that's what people love about Islam, is the pure monotheism, connecting with the Creator, worshiping the Creator alone, not His creation, and those values you exposed of virtue, honesty, justice, establishing
Fairness.
peace,
And respect for woman.
and respect for women. It was there. It's very. It's
So
very.
you see the role of Haimana, right?
Uh-huh.
The motherly figure.
Wow.
Haimana,
Yes.
right? She's doesn't look like they have a fantasy picture of the Muslim woman in the mind of many people, but you can see Haimana very active. She's a clan leader. Her decisions are decision. Her leadership is respected by the warriors and also by the other clans, right? And that was the Muslim role of a Muslim woman, totally different than the picture that today actually shown to the world.
You have some. We're about out of time. Tell us in these last couple of minutes we have. You were having some for Turkey, some
Yes.
contest that was
So
going on.
Zakat Foundation is you probably can see zakat.org as our website. We have a contest that we're going to take two guests to Turkey, and they will visit some of these historical places that I mentioned, including Ibrahim alayhi salam, place of the Abraham and others. Also, I don't know, if the native, the first church that was built by the Paulus. The Paul is also in Turkey actually, in Hatay. So when these guests comes, they will visit Zakat Foundation projects. Also, they will spend time to view the historical places in Turkey, in Istanbul, and also southeastern Turkey.
Last piece of advice for the not yet Muslim who is out there, because everyone has the potential to submit to the Creator, and they're listening, and they've been just bombarded with a lot of things on Fox News, a lot of the Islamophobia industry, and now the history that they're getting is just corrupted. It's something, like we said, the class of civilizations, they try to pump this up. What advice do you have for them that are out there, that they've been bombarded with all of this distortion, myths, truths? What advice do you give for them? And you being a historian now, and you laugh at a lot of these things that we've mentioned.
I will suggest, especially younger brothers and sisters, so learn your own history and learn history of others, and you will see that the history will teach you a lot. And be proud who you are. When you learn, you will see how great men and women the history has created, and be proud who you are, and just live as a good Muslim, and that should be enough. People will learn from you. Just be, the values that you talk about, carry these values, and then let be it, inshallah. And God is great.
Allah imanit.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you very much, Sheikh.
Thank you,
for
my
being with
brother.
us.
please subscribe to The Deen Show. Follow us on our official Facebook and Twitter pages in the links below. Please also help support The Deen Show by making a donation in the link below.